David, you won't get a bonus because you're an unskilled dropout. After this incident, you're going to be demoted or transferred. You won't be in this department anymore." I sighed deeply at Manager Richard, who refused to acknowledge his own faults. I realized that I couldn't work with this man any longer. "Then I'll resign," I said. My subordinates all turned to me with surprised expressions. Honestly, I've reached my limit. If I stayed any longer, I might punch Manager Richard. "Thank you for everything," I said to Manager Richard and left the company. The day after I resigned, I got a call from the company on my cell phone. "Hey, what the hell did you do?" Manager Richard's voice was so loud it distorted, making it hard to understand him. But from what I could make out, it went like this. When Manager Richard came to work today, he had a conversation with an employee. "The stock prices are plummeting." What? The office had a funeral-like atmosphere. And when they investigated the cause, they found out that news of my resignation had spread on social media. That's why they hurriedly called me. My name is David Johnson, a 42-year-old company employee. Our company is a toy manufacturer, and I am an unusual employee who joined the company with just a middle school graduate. Not all toy manufacturers in the country are well-known large corporations. For example, small toy manufacturers in the US make confectionery toys. Our company is a subsidiary of a well-known toy manufacturer with about 50 employees. We mainly make toys for babies. The advantage of being a subsidiary of a large corporation is that they can get our products on store shelves. Although online shopping is mainstream these days, there is still a significant advantage to having products on store shelves. However, the pandemic that hit a few years ago drastically reduced the number of toys purchased in stores. Online shopping became the norm, and our company's sales plummeted. Even though we are a subsidiary of a large corporation, without sales, we would go bankrupt. At this time, our company was in such a dangerous situation that bankruptcy was imminent. President Mike Smith reportedly went so far as to discuss having our company absorbed by the parent company. What saved our company was a completely new product. Our company, which had been making toys for babies, suddenly shifted to creating board games for adults. And these board games sold explosively. During the stay-at-home period, board games met the needs of the times. As a result, our company narrowly avoided bankruptcy and was able to rebuild its operations. Now, most of our company's sales come from board games. In terms of percentage, it's about 90% board games and 10% others. Until a few years ago, I was in the development department, but last year I was assigned to the public relations department. My main job is to promote our games, conducting pop-ups nationwide. My brother asked if you could teach him some tips for the game, said my subordinate Charles Miller. Charles joined our company 3 years ago as a mid-career hire. Before that, he was a high-flying elite working at a trading company, but he suddenly quit and joined us. He was apparently met with considerable opposition from those around him. "Why don't you teach him, Charles? You're good at games too." "My skills can't compare to yours, David. That new game we talked about is finally coming out next month. Our company originally made toys for babies, but we have many employees who love games. President Smith wants to hire employees who love toys in the first place. Charles is a hardcore gamer who can play for 24 hours straight on his days off. Because of that, he's neither married nor has a girlfriend, but he seems happy enough. I also play video games. Recently, we've been talking non-stop about the new game we both like that's coming out next month. It's the first new release in 5 years. I'm really looking forward to it. Can I stay over at your place on release day? Let's play all night, and I'll bring my brother too." I responded to Charles's excited request with a wry smile, saying, "I'll think about it. My wife is pretty tolerant of games, but I doubt she'd be thrilled about me having a subordinate over for an all-night gaming session." "Hey, stop chatting and get back to work." It was Manager Richard Moore who shouted at us. Manager Richard came from the parent company last week. The previous manager retired, and Manager Richard took over his position. It's not uncommon for employees from the parent company to be seconded to our company. The previous manager also came on secondment and stayed until retirement. Manager Richard will probably be here until he retires too. Sorry about that. Charles and I were doing the final checks for the pop-up event starting next week. We got carried away talking while working. However, we weren't slacking off, and we were trying to keep our voices down. You really are a bad influence on those around you. This is why uneducated fools are such a problem. Manager Richard seems to have it out for me and criticizes me at every opportunity. It's well known in this company that I am a middle school graduate. But Manager Richard can't believe someone like that works in a company. He never misses a chance to mock me for it. It was me who derailed the conversation, not David. Besides, David is a middle school graduate, but he's not stupid. You always defend David for some reason. As my junior, you should know your own worth. Choose your associates wisely. Manager Richard sighed and spoke as if giving advice. Charles always defends me when Manager Richard mocks me. However, Manager Richard can't stand it. Charles graduated from a famous private university, and Manager Richard is his senior from the same university. Manager Richard is a staunch believer in academic elitism and thinks his university is the best. Of course, Charles's university is indeed an excellent private university, but it is not as prestigious as state universities. But Manager Richard, proud of his alma mater, dotes on Charles excessively. David is much more competent than I am. Why can't you see that, Manager Richard? You've been brainwashed. How pitiful. Realizing it was futile to argue, Charles sighed and fell silent. Manager Richard, perhaps mistaking Charles's silence for acceptance, nodded in satisfaction and returned to his desk, saying, "Glad you understand." "I really can't stand that guy," Charles said, glaring at Manager Richard. "Well, he's new here," I said, trying to calm him down as we returned to our work. After that, Manager Richard and I never had a proper conversation. One reason was that I was solely responsible for the pop-up project and didn't need to consult him. Furthermore, since Manager Richard had only recently started, he wasn't familiar with the employees' tasks, so everyone kept coming to me for confirmation. I knew Manager Richard didn't like this, but he had to learn the job bit by bit. Then one day, it happened. "Manager Richard, I'm sorry. Robert Davis, one of my subordinates, had mixed up the deadline for the promotion of a new product set to release in 2 months. The client was very angry and demanded that he and the department head come to apologize immediately. It was Robert's mistake, but Manager Richard should have caught it when he approved it. Of course, it had to happen on my day off, so I couldn't check it myself. If it was a less urgent task, I would have checked it after my day off, but this was urgent. Damn it, what were you thinking? This client is a major one. How could you anger them like this? I'm sorry, but they said we need to explain immediately. The client had every right to be angry. Our missed deadline caused them significant trouble. This client had trusted us completely for years. Therefore, we had neglected thorough checks. Why do I have to go apologize? It was your mistake. You go by yourself. But the client said to come with the manager to apologize. Robert was in a panic and on the verge of tears. After being scolded by the client on the phone, he was now getting yelled at by Manager Richard and didn't know what to do. "Manager Richard, I think we should go together to apologize. The client wants a detailed explanation, and we need to discuss the next steps." "Why should I go? I have nothing to do with this project." The fact that he thinks he has nothing to do with it is the biggest problem. Since he approved it, he can't deny responsibility. His lack of knowledge about the project's details reveals that he approved it without proper review. You've checked everyone else's work, so why did you miss this? Isn't that strange? Did you know the deadline was missed and just ignored it? This is ridiculous. Manager Richard was completely losing it and not making any sense. Of course, I didn't know the deadline was missed. Robert, who made the mistake, is not a newbie. He's handled many projects before. I thought a final check would suffice, so I didn't fully grasp the project's details. You go. I don't want to go and get yelled at. Pretend to be the manager and apologize. What are you talking about? I sighed in exasperation at Manager Richard, who was whining like a child. Since we made the mistake, it's only natural to apologize, and as the department head, he bears some responsibility for Robert's mistake. Anyway, just go and apologize. The client is waiting. With that, I forced Manager Richard and Robert into a taxi. We couldn't start fixing things until they apologized. I then began to hurriedly prepare our next steps. About 2 hours later, Manager Richard and Robert returned to the office. Robert looked very tired, and Manager Richard was furious, his face bright red. I expected to get scolded next, thinking it was inevitable. When Manager Richard said with a smirk, "I blamed everything on you," I was dumbfounded, not understanding what he meant. "What do you mean?" I told him it was all your fault. I explained that while Robert was the contact, you handled the procedures. The client was confused but was angry at you for pinning the blame on Robert. Laughing heartily, Manager Richard didn't seem to be joking. Confused, I looked at Robert, who was on the verge of tears, staring back at me. It seemed Manager Richard was telling the truth. Why would you lie like that? The client was furious. I figured if I blamed you, they wouldn't yell at me. They saw me as the poor guy who had to apologize for his subordinate's mistake, so they didn't get mad at me at all. They're so gullible. I couldn't believe my ears. How could he come up with something so awful? He had no idea why he went to apologize in the first place. So, what did the client say? Well, they were really pissed. You'll probably be called in later. For now, I'll tell the president that your mistake caused a huge problem. You won't get a bonus this month. Unskilled dropout. Honestly, I wasn't even surprised anymore. I started to think the company had a problem for leaving the bonus evaluations to Manager Richard. Wait, that's not fair. David had nothing to do with this mistake. Of course he did. If David had caught Robert's mistake, this wouldn't have happened. Unable to hold back, Charles snapped at Manager Richard, but he wouldn't listen. Charles, you're overestimating David. After this incident, he'll be demoted or transferred. He won't be in this department anymore. Start preparing the handover. I sighed deeply at Manager Richard, who refused to acknowledge his own faults. I realized that I couldn't work with this man any longer. Then I'll resign. When I said that, my subordinates all looked at me with surprised expressions. Only Manager Richard laughed and said, "Oh, please do." "Wait, David, please," Charles said, panicking, but I had reached my limit. If I stayed any longer, I might punch Manager Richard. "Thank you for everything," I said to Manager Richard and left the company. The next day, I was sitting at home, doing nothing. My wife and kids were quite surprised that I had suddenly quit my job, but they weren't angry. "It must have been really bad for you to quit. I'm working too, so you don't need to rush to find another job," my wife said to me, then told me to do the cleaning, laundry, and shopping before she went to work. I married my wife when I was 33. It's been less than 10 years since we got married, but it feels like we've been together for much longer. I had been cleaning, doing laundry, and shopping since morning, and I took a break before preparing dinner, but my mind was filled with worries about the company. I kept thinking about whether the projects I had overseen were okay, and if my subordinates were facing any trouble. Even though I decided to resign, it wasn't because I hated the job. One big reason I couldn't go back to collect my belongings was that I didn't want to set foot in the company. If I went back, I'd end up helping my subordinates with their work. That would defeat the purpose of resigning. I sighed for what felt like the 100th time today. just as I thought about starting dinner preparations. My phone rang. I wondered if something had happened at the company and answered the call. "What the hell did you do?" Manager Richard's angry voice came through as soon as I answered, and I winced. His was the last voice I wanted to hear. "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb." Manager Richard's voice was so loud it was distorted, making it hard to understand what he was saying. But from what I could make out, it went like this. When Manager Richard arrived at work today, there was a conversation with an employee. "The stock prices are plummeting." What? The office had a funeral-like atmosphere. And when they investigated the cause, they found out that news of my resignation had spread on social media. It had even made it into online news and was trending on social media. "It's just you resigning, so why is there such a fuss and a stock crash? You must have done something behind the scenes, you sneaky bastard." I don't know anything about it. I understood what Manager Richard was saying, but I really didn't know anything. I had only told my family about my resignation, and I hadn't posted it on social media. No matter what you say, I can only tell you I don't know. If you're looking for the cause, calling me is pointless. Why? Then why did the stock prices crash so suddenly? Everyone at the company is saying it's because I made you quit, and that's why the stock is falling. If this continues, I'll get called by the president and get chewed out. I understood Manager Richard's frustration, but there was nothing I could do about it. I'm currently on paid leave and haven't officially resigned yet. But I've already decided that I won't work under Manager Richard anymore. No matter what you say, I'm not going back to the company. Stock prices may drop, but they'll eventually rise again. You'll just have to endure it. I knew I was saying something inappropriate, but I was fed up with talking to Manager Richard. I hung up the phone abruptly and sighed. I understood that the company was in a difficult situation. However, there was nothing I would do for the company. Manager Richard kept calling me, but I ignored every call. The next day, he called multiple times again, but when I continued to ignore him, he eventually stopped calling. I was willing to answer calls from my subordinates if they called me personally, but the calls never came from anyone other than Manager Richard. A few days later, I went to the company to clear out my belongings. I considered having everything thrown away, but some items, like a birthday card from the employees, made me want to retrieve them. Feeling a bit nervous about seeing my co-workers after a long time, I entered the office. The first person to notice me was Charles. "David." I could only smile awkwardly at Charles's genuinely happy expression. If Manager Richard's calls were any indication, the past few days must have been tough. "Long time no see, how have you been? I came to pick up the stuff I left behind." "Oh, I see." Charles was clearly disappointed. He probably thought I might be coming back. "Your desk is just as you left it. Just take what you need, and I'll handle the rest." His words carried a clear wish for me to return. Of course, I cared about my subordinates and liked the work, but I just couldn't work under Manager Richard. "Well, if it isn't David, ignoring all my calls, how dare you show your face here?" Manager Richard spotted me and immediately started yelling. The employees looked exasperated, and I felt deep sympathy for them. "I'm just here to pick up my belongings. I'll leave right after." "Wait, the stock price is still plummeting. Go explain the reason to the president." As he shouted, Manager Richard grabbed me by the collar. I had no idea why the stock prices were crashing. "Stop it. I'm just here to pick up my belongings. Why do I need to talk to the president? I have nothing to do with this company anymore. You'd better stop that attitude." Manager Richard's pupils were completely dilated as he punched me in the face. He's quite overweight, which added force to his punch. I had never been punched before, and the shock and pain left me stunned. "David, are you okay?" "Serves you right. Now go explain everything. If you don't, I'll get fired." "What the hell is going on here?" A loud yell interrupted the chaos in the office. Looking towards the voice, I saw the president glaring at us. President, I was just about to go see you, if you could wait a moment. Do you even realize what you've done? The president, red-faced and out of breath from anger, yelled at manager Richard. I come back from a business trip to find the stock price crashing, David quitting, and you punching him. What the hell is going on? I didn't punch him. That's an exaggeration. That's not an exaggeration. He punched me square in the face. David, are you okay? And what's this about you resigning? If there's any issue, we can address it immediately. There's no issue. This dropout just decided to quit on his own. Manager Richard muttered in a panicked tone, trying to speak over the president. The president looked at manager Richard with utter annoyance. I'm talking to David. You were supposed to explain why he resigned, but you didn't show up. That's because manager Richard, now flustered, had lost all his previous bravado. With a sigh, I told the president everything manager Richard had done to me. I explained how I had been doing all of manager Richard's work, how he blamed his mistakes on me, and how he said I wouldn't get a bonus. I have a lot of respect for this company where I've worked for so long, but I can't work under a boss like him. As I finished speaking, the president ground his teeth and glared at manager Richard. You've really done something stupid, haven't you? The president, completely furious, caused manager Richard to let out a small scream. But he's just a high school dropout. Someone like him doesn't belong in our company. We need excellent college graduates like Charles and me. Manager Richard pointed at Charles, who looked away in disgust. Charles clearly didn't want to be associated with manager Richard. What the hell are you talking about? What? The president looked genuinely confused. You think David isn't suitable for our company because he's a high school dropout? Do you not know that David is the one who helped build this company to what it is today? What? The president looked around at the employees, bewildered. It seemed as if manager Richard wanted to say, is that true? Manager Richard, you really don't understand. It's a joke that you don't even know David's name despite being at this company. What the hell? What does it matter that he's a dropout? Manager Richard, who truly didn't understand, stomped his feet in frustration like a child. A few years ago, this company entered the board game business. It was my idea to develop our flagship board game. I realized that our existing products and sales methods had no future. I was grateful to this company for hiring me despite my lack of a high school diploma. Unlike others who thought we should just get absorbed by the parent company if things got tough. I believed in the value of this company and wanted to preserve its name. While everyone else had given up on the company, David never did. I was surprised when he suggested making board games, but I wanted to support his efforts. The president said, we decided to create a product completely different from the baby toys we had been making. I knew an unknown toy wouldn't sell. I decided that I could raise the profile of it myself. I started posting daily videos on a streaming service, explaining the board games I developed. At first, the views were minimal, but gradually, the channel gained subscribers, and our board games became more well-known. A well-known influencer even made a video featuring our board game, which significantly boosted its popularity. In the gaming community, David's channel is famous. It's not just about explaining board games. The depth of the games and David's unbeatable skills make it incredibly entertaining. Charles said, unable to suppress his laughter. Many brainy influencers challenge David, but no one can beat him. Watching a middle school graduate like David defeat people from prestigious universities is quite satisfying. He continued, it has become that kind of channel. I added, initially, the channel was meant to promote our board games, but now it has turned into a platform where challengers try to defeat me. Fortunately, it has become very popular. Thanks to David, our company became known as the company that makes board games. With that, sales skyrocketed. The games were undeniably fun, so once people knew about them, they sold well. That was when our stock prices soared," the president added with a nod. Our board games, available in English, were a huge hit overseas as well. As a result, our stock prices reached unprecedented heights for us company. Now, we even hold world championships for our board games. The prize for the winner is a chance to challenge David, but David never loses." The president laughed. "I can't afford to lose at a game I developed," I said. "It's like my child. Having designed it from scratch with the strategy in mind, I felt unbeatable in this game. A lot of people invested in our stock because David was with us. So, it's no surprise that the stock prices plummeted when he resigned. Apparently, the source of the information leak was an employee of a client that Manager Richard visited." "What?" Manager Richard's face twisted in a tearful, forced smile at Charles's words. "The client is also a huge fan of David. They were probably angry about the negative comments made about him. It seems that an employee from the client company posted about it on social media, causing the rumors to spread quickly. It was one of our employees who confirmed the news of David's resignation." "David, let me ask again, why are you leaving our company?" The president knew the answer. I glanced at Manager Richard, who was trembling slightly. He knew what I was about to say. "I don't want to work under Manager Richard. If someone else takes his place, I won't resign." "I see. Understood." Manager Richard looked devastated, while the president nodded in satisfaction. "Then, Manager Richard is fired effective immediately. He will be held responsible for the financial losses due to the stock crash and will pay compensation. Also, we will file for damages for his mistreatment of you, David. Can you visit a psychiatrist tomorrow and get a diagnosis?" I couldn't help but laugh at the president's serious tone. He was truly ruthless. "David is crucial to me and the company. We can replace Manager Richard, but we can't replace David." I completely agree. Education background mean nothing compared to David. No matter how educated, no one can beat him at the games. Charles sighed deeply. "It's not ideal to measure everything by a game, but it is a true. Judging solely by education background is too simplistic. All right, let's spread the word that David is returning to the company. David, can you start back today?" "Yes, I can," I answered and sat down at my desk. Everything in the drawer and on top of the desk was exactly as I had left it. There was no dust, so someone must have been cleaning it for me. While the employees busily returned to work, Manager Richard stood there in a daze. He had lost everything in an instant, and no one felt sorry for him. After that, Manager Richard was immediately fired from the company. As the president had said, he faced a large compensation claim. As for my damages, I honestly didn't care either way, but the president, still irritated, and insisted, "Take what you can get. You were forced to do all that work in place of Manager Richard. This is the only way I'll feel satisfied." Grateful for the support from those around me, I decided to get a diagnosis and claim compensation. It was comforting to know that others were angrier about this situation than I was. The president was still looking for more ways to hold Manager Richard accountable. The debt Manager Richard incurred was astronomical, something he could never repay in his lifetime. Additionally, Manager Richard's wife immediately filed for divorce. Their marriage had already been cold, and they were living separately within the same house. This incident was undoubtedly the final straw. Manager Richard lost everything in an instant, and now lives alone in a rundown apartment. He works part-time jobs from morning until night to make ends meet. But he's fallen behind on alimony and compensation payments, and has even resorted to loan sharks. His life is completely broken, and it's unlikely he'll ever return to a normal life. Today, Charles is staying over at my place. A new game was released, and Charles insisted on staying over to play it together. I thought my wife, Maria, might be upset, but she said, "It's been tough for you, and you need a break. Besides, Charles is polite, so it's fine." With Maria's approval, Charles happily showed up with bags full of beer and snacks. We could play online, you know. I'm old-fashioned that way. I prefer playing while having a beer together. Charles's face looked boyish as he manipulated the controller. Anyway, I'm really glad you came back, David. There were many employees ready to quit if you did. Honestly, I was one of them. Charles, you joined the company saying you were my biggest fan, didn't you? I remembered when David first joined the company. Charles always commented on my videos, so I recognized him. I was surprised when this enthusiastic fan joined my company. To me, David is like a god. Your videos saved me when I was going through tough times. Apparently, Charles had some troubles with his social circles during college. He often told me that my videos helped him during that time. He wasn't the only viewer who felt that way. Being able to impact people's lives is a great job. David, you're amazing. As we chatted, I thought about how I wanted to do this job forever. There's nothing more rewarding than knowing your actions can empower others. It's the AI era now. We'll master AI faster than anyone else and make a lot of profit. Get rid of that old-fashioned system. It's useless now. CEO Miller and Daniel were unaware that it's the #1 market share system in the industry that I developed and asked for it to be removed. Indeed, the advancements in AI technology are remarkable, and AI can now handle parts of system development. However, it's impossible for AI to recreate the complex system I painstakingly developed. Understood? Good luck with that. I repeatedly advised them against it. But since they wouldn't listen and insisted on deletion, I deleted the system as they wished and decided to resign. Afterward, Miller and Daniel tried various ways to utilize AI to restore or redevelop the system, but they failed every time. Not only that, the reason for their insistence on introducing AI was revealed, and the situation took a shocking turn. I am Tom Johnson, 43 years old. I work as a systems engineer at Miller Tech. I love my job and have been so engrossed in it that I'm still single at this age. Sometimes I feel pathetic about it, but it can't be helped now. At the very least, I want to excel in the industry as a systems engineer, so I dedicate myself to my work every day. They could at least raise our salaries a bit. That system brought in a lot of profits, so they should have plenty of money. Exactly, apparently, the president is too picky about money. I'm venting with a co-worker in the break room. 5 years ago, Miller Tech developed a certain business management system after much effort. It was developed in-house and also implemented by many IT companies. And its market share has reached an astounding record of #1 in the industry. This market share has been increasing every year, and the company's profits should be higher than ever. So the business situation must not be bad, but for some reason salaries are not increasing. Was it 5 years ago? Our salaries went up when that system boomed, and that was the last time. Yeah, that's what I think, especially since the new CEO took over. It's all about saving money every day. The current CEO of Miller Tech, Richard Miller, is the second-generation CEO. Miller is the son of the former CEO and used to work at another company. However, a few years ago, he was called back to take over Miller Tech after the former CEO retired. Since the new CEO took over, we've been constantly told to save money, and we can't even use the air conditioner unless it's extremely hot or cold. We're also told to turn off the lights in unused areas immediately. As employees, we can't help but feel stressed in this environment. Miller was saying. He worked for another company in the same industry before coming here, but I don't think he knows much about systems development. When it comes to development, he mostly leaves it to the employees. He just drops by occasionally and never gives advice or shows concern for us. Maybe he doesn't fully understand Miller Tech's business, but it's been a few years since he became CEO. Instead of gaining trust over the years, since he took over as president, he has only caused us to become more dissatisfied with him. wanting him to think a little more about us employees and create a more comfortable work environment for us. Do you think I can work here until retirement? Retirement, I don't know, but finding another job in your 40s is tough. With these complaints, my co-worker and I end our break. In the cold room with restricted air conditioning, we resume our work. This is amazing. Can code be generated this easily? That day, when I returned from my break, Miller unusually came to our department, expressing admiration. Next to him was Daniel Smith, and they were both looking at something on the computer. Curious about what they were doing, I decided to ask. Is something wrong? Miller, Daniel? We've introduced a code-generating AI. Do you want to see it? When I looked at the computer screen Miller indicated, it displayed freshly generated code. Did AI make this? Yes, it's amazing, right? I recommended its introduction. When I asked, Daniel answered, you just input instructions, and it generates the corresponding code. Daniel showed me the code generation AI in action. Indeed, I was surprised that the code was generated in the blink of an eye according to the instructions I had entered. As someone who has worked as an engineer for many years, I could immediately see that the displayed code followed the instructions accurately. A little tweaking would make it fully integrable into the system. I had heard of code generating AI before, but I was astonished at how easily it could now produce code.